Shall we begin?
Yes.
All right. Sure. Thank you all for coming. I'm amazed at the crowd we have. Thanks everyone for turning out tonight. The format will be, I'm going to review the examination and then open it up for questions to talk about what's been found here and what's not been found also. Let me say this, that this is the infamous McFadden Red Book. Okay? I did not create this. Mr. McFadden and Kelly did. My purpose in examining this is to do an examination, not an investigation. That's a difference. I only looked into what was in the contents of the Red Book. I did not do an investigation of the POA financial information. I wanted to answer what was in the book, or at least to satisfy myself that I had found things that are important and needed to be discussed. All right? So that's where we are. I'm going to sit down if you don't mind. Can you see me at all in the back? Well, that's just as well. All right. I'll stand up. Now, the McFadden Red Book here, as you can see, I've made tabs on about 200 items in here. It's not necessary to go through all 200 of them, I don't think. But just to show you that I have looked at every page in this book 3 times. Okay? All right. So, how did we do this examination? Well, first of all, here's the methods. 1, read this book 3 times, made notes, that kind of thing. 2, had a discussion with Maybeth, previous executive director. Nick was there, and so was Becky during that discussion. It was not an interrogation, it was a chat. Okay. Spoke with Jan Seymour, the mom's group leader, and Frost Bank. Those are the resources that went into this. Okay. Let's start with this. Let's talk about what Jim's comments were, or allegations that were wrong. Let's start with that, and then we'll get to the right ones. That be all right, Jim? Sure. All right. First of all, none of the POA CAM fees, your annual dues, okay, the money you put in every year, was put into the debit card account. Not directly. Of course, in order to fund the account, we had to use POA money, but no direct deposits were made of CAM fees. Is that clear? Everybody follow me on that? All right. So that was something Jim thought might have happened, did not happen. All right.
Is he going to apologize for making it seem like she did something illegal?
You're out of order.
No, I think an apology would be
Any other income?
I mean, if we're going to put allegations out there, shouldn't we apologize when they're wrong?
Travis, does the POA have other sources of income other than CAM fees?
No. No apology.
Let's see. The POA has a credit card processing account that it uses to accept payments for the CAM fees. All right. It does not have a Square account. Okay? The Square account was owned by Jen Seymour. We'll get to that later. So the POA does use credit card processing, and it goes to the UBS account. It was not used to deposit any money into the debit card account. Gun locks. Much has been made of gun locks. The gun locks were relatively inexpensive, and they were used to secure the flashing sign on white cap that tells you how fast you're going. Okay? It wasn't used to secure weapons of any kind. Although if you consider speeding a weapon, that might be the case. Next one was, there was no structuring going on. Structuring is when you have a plan to use illegal, I shouldn't say illegal, but money to avoid crossing the $10,000 deposit limit. I didn't see that that happened. The POA in their opening letter put limits on how much to spend per day and how much the top could be in the account. All right? However, the bank has no such limits. In a debit card, the bank will let you spend as much as you've got in the account. So if you've got 50 grand in the account, you can spend that, even though it might violate the internal control placed by the POA. Coffee mugs. All right. We spent some money on what allegedly were coffee mugs. I have been told that they were not coffee mugs, but in fact koozies with the POA name and logo on them. Okay, that were passed out to whoever, I guess, as a promotional piece. There was a statement about illegal checks. When money was transferred from the POA to the Kiwanis Club, there were 3 checks used to write money from the POA account to the Kiwanis Club. All right? They were not countered checks. When you open an account, you get a little booklet of checks. Maybe you've seen that. They're sort of temporary in nature. You put the number 1 on the first one. All right. There was no illegality in using these checks. However, our POA policy requires 2 signatures, and there were only 1 signature on those checks, which would be a violation of our POA policy at the time. Okay, those are all things that Jim either didn't understand or got wrong. No offense, Jim. All right. Some things he got right. Sales tax. We did claim a tax exemption for sales tax because we're a not-for-profit organization on major purchases. All right. We did not take them on middle of the road and low purchases. I did not add up how much that comes to. It could be hundreds, it could be thousands, I don't know. There is a way to reclaim that if we want to pay somebody to add it all up. It may not add up to more than it would cost us to get it back. So that's a decision somebody will have to make along the line. The Square account. Okay, the Square account was used for collecting money from the Mom's Playground Fund. All right, nothing illegal about that. Really poor business practice. Charges were placed on her credit card and processed through Square and deposited into the POA account, the debit card account. Well, that immediately commingled a private party's money with POA funds. All right? And that should never happen. This is my opinion, but that should never happen. Then we had to transfer the money out. And that's where those 3 checks came from. They went over to the Kiwanis Club, and then they were overpaid, and then they sent some money back, and then now we have too much again. So I would recommend a calculator. Next, but there was nothing illegal about that. It may have been silly business practice, but there's nothing illegal about it. I don't see anybody going to jail over trying to collect money for swing sets and the like and getting it confused where it sits. Gasoline. Okay, this is a pretty big deal. According to Jim, there were 135 gas purchases, correct? All right. They were purchased in a variety of places across Corpus Christi, mostly up and down SPID. In speaking with Maybeth, she said she was authorized to fill up her tank by board members. And this must be going back sometimes long before my time. Okay. So we might ask someone, is that correct? If you look at 55 months at 135 tanks, that's 2.45 tanks a month. Okay? There were 4 car washes. Really? Okay. Dog park. We purchased some banners and some stickers to promote the dog park. Whether the POA ought to be involved in the dog park or not involved is another question. It sounds like a private enterprise to me. We bought a lot of poop bags, thousands of those. It's not funny, I know, but it is. And then we bought 2 dispensers to put the poop bags in, one on Villish and the other over at Dowden.
We got to worry about toxoplasmosis or whatever. So. Oh.
The largest purchases were $1,800. There were 2 of them. One was the boat motor, the infamous boat motor. If I can restate the story I heard from Maybeth about it, if I can remember all the details. A lady on the island lent the POA a boat, but it didn't have a motor, or it had a motor and it broke. And then we had the man who used the boat to go around and pick the stuff up out of the canals, but needed a motor, so Maybeth bought him a motor to put on the boat. The boat worked a while, then for some reason he left and the motor went with him. That's about the best we're going to get out of the story. We purchased about $1,800 of the PIPOA luncheon sponsorship. Should we be sponsoring PIPOA lunches? Pictometry. Pictometry is a system whereby we buy a service from a company that flies an airplane over all of Corpus Christi, takes pictures of the entire city. It sits in a database. We subscribe to that database and can see new construction, old construction, things like that. This system service is used all over the United States. It's not just here. The city of Corpus Christi uses it. Some people think it's an invasion of privacy. Other people think it's a good thing to have to facilitate our compliance programs. We probably need a compliance town hall to determine whether we want to keep using that system and other things related to compliance. Yes, the director has a telephone. We buy a cell phone to use. I personally don't think that's outrageous. Could be an emergency at home, from here to Becky at home. A lot of people have company cell phones. I don't find that to be outrageous. The highest amount in the debit card account was almost $8,000. Garden tillers, we bought 3 of those. I'm sure that was for the garden use, to till up people's plots. We have 1 left. Where the other 2 went is unknown. The one in the shed at the POA office is pretty beat up. We bought a water tank, a 300-gallon water tank, so that a company could put it in their truck and water the medians and other plants. Should we have bought a water tank for a private contractor to do the job? You be the judge of that. We bought a couple of chainsaws, no doubt again, for the garden project. We bought some flower arrangements that were sent to either a board member or a staff member, ostensibly for an illness in the family, something of that nature. A couple of iPads were bought. I know we talked about those today. We still have 2 left. They didn't go anywhere. We bought into a Carbonite subscription. That's an off-site computer backup system. Apparently we couldn't get it to jive with our system, so it was canceled. it's hard to say whether some of these items were being monitored by the existing board or not, because it stretched from 12 to 17, 2012 to 17. A lot of people came and went. When I came on the board, I never heard of the debit card account, never saw a statement until we got to this. All right. That pretty well covers the broad examination. Who'd like to have the first question? Yes, ma'am. Ladies first, Travis.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, the board has now retained a professional CPA, correct?
That is correct.
And the CPA has not reviewed any of this information.
That is correct.
But, so we're all here today on your inspection of this and Jim McFadden's,
That is correct.
and not the retained professionals.
That is correct.
This is purely your somehow unprofessional assessment of what is in these books.
Well, I think unprofessional is a little strong.
But
But
you're not a CPA, correct?
No,
Okay.
I am not a CPA.
And
However,
Mr. McFadden's not a CPA.
not that I know of.
Okay.
We're very fortunate that we have all the statements from this account with line items for each expenditure. So I don't believe you need to be a CPA to read what it says on the line and then look at the backup materials. Just for your information, I was a federal agent with the Treasury Department, have a lot of training in accounting. Well, giggle if you want to, I have. Travis had his hand up first.
Very good.
Hi there. Hey, trust but verify. Who made that? Who made put that quote? Very famous. It's Ronald Reagan, yeah, very president. Trust but verify. As an entrepreneur of 15 years, I can appreciate the need to want to be fiscally responsible as much as possible and always self-evaluate. Always strive to be better, where can we find waste and inefficiencies. Huge difference between waste and inefficiency and theft and fraud. And what I see going on here within our community is this attempt to combine the two and vindictively go after people by name who aren't even here to defend themselves. Some of the people here you name in here to defend themselves, I don't know. But trust but verify. You know, and I got a question for you. You're the president of the POA, vice president of the POA is Mrs. Marta Sprout. You went to Austin, I believe it was Austin, and you met with our state representative Todd Hunter. And in the April POA meeting, you stated that one, you went and talked to Hunter. You only talked about baseball with him. And two, Mrs. Sprout said twice, emphatically, that Mr. Hunter called her. Mr. Hunter called her to arrange this meeting, secret meeting where you represented our POA.
Travis, this has
Sir,
nothing to do with the Red Book.
You represented our
Can we get back to topic
You
here?
represented our POA to advocate for a law to make it criminal, a crime in the state of Texas, to cut or trim your palm trees. This is what you did. This is what you did with this meeting with Todd Hunter. And then you advocated to remove the MMD. And here's trust but verify. I called Mr. Hunter to verify this information. And one, he stated emphatically no, he did not call to arrange this meeting. And two, he did not only talk about baseball. And three, he's not against any of that stuff you advocated for. So my question to you, sir, is will you apologize, or will you set the record straight on that? Or will you apologize for lying? Because I doubled down on that question to his staff members. Hey, is that true? Did Mr. Hunter call you to arrange a meeting? And they said, no, I don't know why we lied, there was no way that would happen. So sir, will you apologize for lying? And will you set the record straight? And if you're not going to apologize, why don't you go ahead and resign right here?
That's a good one.
First of all, okay, Marta, are you here?
Yes.
All right, just a couple of quick answers. Did Todd Hunter call you, yes or no?
Yes.
All right.
In fact, I have his voice on my phone requesting it right here.
Now, I don't know what the problem is with the meeting with Todd Hunter. he's our representative, so I think that's crazy.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Now, all right, that's enough. We're not gonna go down a rabbit hole here, as Brett likes to say. Red, can you go ahead?
I've got a question.
No.
Yes. For you represented us and advocated like you were trying to conceal. You're trying to conceal that. And you're lying about it. What did you say at that meeting? You said none of your business. None of your business. And you represented us.
I'm like business. I was also a federal investigator for 20 years with the U.S. Army, only against counter-terrorists and spies. They're really bad guys. That was what I did for the first 20 years.
All right.
The next 20 years, I was computer security, which includes fiscal security. So I wasn't just an entrepreneur for 15 years, but I know how to balance a freaking checkbook. And I know the difference between office supplies and an outboard motor. That's not an office supply. I know what breaking the rules are of our organization. Breaking the rules. I don't care if it's criminal or not. They broke our rules. They went beyond what they were authorized to do because they had no adult leadership telling them what was okay and what was not okay. So my question to you, Mr. President, are you going to fix that? Are you going to fix our operation that has no adult leadership and how to spend our money?
Slow down. Let's all take a breath here. Have some civility. What is your question?
Are you going to fix the fact that we have no fiscal policies for our office staff? They don't know how to spend our money. They have nothing written in anything other than rules that they totally don't abide by.
All right. Well, there are certain rules in place in the office. Sometimes they're followed, sometimes they're not. We're going to do our best to implement systems that provide checks and balances that prohibit people going astray. And that's what our mission is. All right?
That's my only question.
I think Carter had his hand up next. Go ahead, Carter.
I have two parts. The first one is, I don't think you shared with us your background in this area. And I'd appreciate you sharing that again to show you're qualified to do it. And then the second part is, after you tell us that, will you tell us, in your opinion, if there's any there in this thing? Is there any criminal stuff that's been, is there any, can we just get an answer as to, is there anything serious? I understand that different people have different ways of running business and stuff, and we can argue about whether it was a poor idea to share the, money in the account and how one signature on the deal or whatever. But was there anything that has any meat?
Good question. Thank you, Carter. Thank you. Well, I'm not inclined to talk about myself particularly, but since you asked.
Well, what was impressive to me?
Since you asked, in my day, in my youth, I was a police officer and a detective with the New Mexico Governor Organized Crime Commission, which investigated organized crime. I was the white-collar crime investigator. And I did several years with the Secret Service, which investigates Treasury Department violations. Plus my law firm and I specialized in working with corporations who were being embezzled from. And the last case I had, the guy's still in jail. So, now, the second part of your question. The only thing I have looked at the POA is this book. Okay? That's it. Let's make that perfectly clear. I found nothing that I would prosecute someone for in this book. Now, here's why. Number one, our executive director has the latitude to spend up to $5,000 if something is in the budget. All right? That keeps the board from having to run down there every day and take a vote, I guess. And two, the only other issue that might be of interest is the gasoline. And so Maybeth told me and Nick and Becky that the board authorized her to fill up her tank. Those are her words, not mine. Am I right, Nick?
Correct.
All right. So there you go. Next question. Let's see. Oh, Tom, you had yours up first.
When you look at all of these various items, the common question that I have is that were the actions approved by the board? And if they are approved by the board, is it by a vote, motion and a vote? Or is it this board member saying, hey, you can do this? And then, of course, and specifically regarding the $5,000, that's a fairly good chunk of change. And so I would have the same question. So when you look at these, you don't know who approved them, or did the executive coordinator decide to do it herself? Or, and some of these involve policy as well as finances. So that would be my question, going through these, what happened? And then, of course, obviously in the future, it seems like we need to change the system to where there's more control, but also that the board should also have more motions and votes probably on these issues than they're having. That's my comment.
The first part of your question, I don't know the answer to. If I wasn't there, don't know.
And has anything changed? That's the question.
Nothing has changed that I'm aware of, other than I think we have taken it upon ourselves, Marvin, Nick, and I, and Vicki, to take a closer look at signing checks and what kinds of things are getting purchased and paid for. But the actual policy hasn't changed, and that is on the to-do list to discuss and decide how to modify that to give it a little tighter control. Again, checks and balances. That's what we need. All right, Jim, go ahead.
So last year I requested a copy of the taxes, and I got the taxes. And I contacted a couple of board members to tell them that I noticed the problems, and I got a lot of pushback on that. So we had a new executive director, and I got to tell everybody that we would not be talking about the debit card tonight if we didn't have a new executive director, because in November, early on, she announced that she closed the account. And when I heard, that was the first time I heard that we had a debit card. I think that's probably the first time you were even aware that we had a debit card. So my head spun around, I put in a request, and I said, you got too busy. It's probably a lot of data. She said, I'm going to have to search for receipts. And she did a wonderful job. We met in February because I kept pushing the data. And she gave me everything that's in that book. What that is the letter from the board in 2012 authorizing the debit card. It's every single month of the statement. It's every single receipt that could be found, and then the closing balance moving back. Now, I've got a series of questions, but one of them is, why does it take me to write a check to the POA to request the data when the board had the fiduciary responsibility to be looking? Because the letter said $5,000 a month, $250 a day, and the board will take the obligation to inspect it monthly, top off the account. The first and second and third month, the balance dropped and there was never any review. By the fourth month, they simply topped off the account. By the fifth and sixth month, we started seeing things that have nothing to do with primary maintenance. And it went on and on and on.
In your opinion?
In my opinion, you're correct. My opinion. So every time I've looked through this, there have been additional things that have been covered. So Marvin, 52 times during the life of that card, a check was signed by 2 individuals, 3 board members, that looked and had a duty to look and review the monthly responsibility, what was spent. One of those former board members is sitting right here, Nancy Carson, who signed a bunch of those checks. So I'd like to know if she ever reviewed the content, or did she simply just sign the checks because maybe that said sign the checks?
May I have the microphone?
If at any given time anybody had looked at this, we would not be having
Don't
this
bang that
discussion.
gavel at me.
I'm banging it at him. Cool down. Now, did you want to?
She's a little aggressive.
Yes, I am.
Of course. She's got called out.
All right, anybody else have a question?
Mine is in the form of a statement, to be honest. I didn't realize that we were limited to the debit card.
Can't hear you, Sheila.
Come on, use your lawyer.
Use your playground voice.
Hi. I didn't realize that we were limited to the credit card account. My concern was an audit. I don't care what's in that red book. And just as was stated, we're all unprofessionals. It needs looking at. That's the message that comes through very strong. It needs looking at. And I lived through it. I was really upset when the audit didn't pass. We need an audit. And we are all neighbors. This is a shared problem. There's no two sides. This is our problem. When I looked through this is the 2015 balance sheet, and I'll tell you when I really had tremors, and that was when the financial packet was given out at the last meeting, and I believe it was Marta who said she's not going to sign it, that the income from April was stated in 3 entirely different figures in the same packet. I had a heart attack. I very quietly sat there. Honestly, if that's wrong, what about these sheets that have been saying that our $10 million is invested? And it's invested in all these Herndon Plant, Oakley funds, mutual funds, Bond Fund of America, Dodge and Cox Income. And I asked Marvin, did you go to each of these funds and get a verified letter stating that the balance is such and such, so that you get a clean point that we know how much do we have? It hasn't been done. We need that in an audit. We need it. It's our money. All of you. The other small item was, there's never been a fixed asset inventory in all the years. There's never been a fixed asset inventory. But you have all these things coming in, $1,800 boat motors. There should have been a fixed asset inventory. That was missing too. That's all.
Thank you, Sheila. Next.
Hello. My name is Marilyn Litt. I'm a property owner. I thought there was going to be an audit, but I guess I'm just not. Well, the question I had, I'm not up to date on all of it. The question I had was, setting aside the issue of whether or not we claimed sales tax that we could have claimed, is there any other reason why we might have to refile the income tax returns?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Our 2016 income tax return, and let's not all get into a panic that the IRS is going to show up with SWAT team at our door. All right. If I can have your attention for just a minute. The audit from 2016 refers to, in their notes, related party transactions. All right. It refers to $106,000 that we spent with an engineering firm who was with a director employed by that firm. That should be listed on our tax return or disclosed. All right. Also $31,000 to the son of our executive director. There's a place on the tax return.
What's the context of that, though?
Well, if you'll shut up, I'll tell you.
Well, be sure to put the context of what, if you're going to put something out there, you got to put the context of it.
Excuse me, it was my question. Let me get my answer first. I paid for this microphone in case you recognize that.
All right, the tax return actually asks those questions, whether or not these kinds of transactions occurred. There's a specific space for 28A, B, and C on the 990. All right. Then you have to fill out an L something, another form. Okay. It's not illegal to disclose this. It's not illegal to do this. So why it wasn't put on the tax return is a mystery to me, and that's an unsolved mystery so far. It would have done no harm to put it there. Why it got left off, I don't know.
I'm out of order, but I'd like to say one thing. If you look at the 2013, 2015, the 2015 audit of the Beautification Trust Fund, the auditors warned the board that they were not issuing 1099s or collecting W-9s, so they knew that these weren't on the tax returns. You go all the way back, and there are 3 people on the tax returns, the 3 employees. You're not listing any of your, if you would, interested parties. Maybe I've had a few corporations. One of the board members has an LLC. None of this was, this is mandatory with IRS, mandatory. So how could you not do it when you were warned to do it and the auditor pointed it out? We need an audit. We really need an audit on that.
Now, in speaking with our new CPA firm during their interview, I brought this point up to them, and they said they would like to take a very close look at that situation and possibly, more likely than not, refile those tax returns. But it's harmless, folks. Why they didn't do that is a mystery to me. Our CPA should have included that. I don't know. Next question. Yes, ma'am. Terry.
Putting all of this stuff aside, the office not having any way to do any kind of financial business transactions electronically sort of ties our hands. So I just recently had a check for a place that said we are no longer going to take any more checks from you. You have to pay electronically. I'm the treasurer for a nonprofit, and it's a voluntary position, but that's the last check they're going to take from us from there. And it's a city entity. It's paying Corpus Christi.
Yeah, it may be that we have to go to many more electronic payments if that's what the folks require. Heretofore, we've paid by check, including our payroll. And I don't know why we can't change our payroll system to direct deposit rather than writing out checks. This is the 21st century, so we need to move up to that for sure. There's a whole laundry list of things that we could do to modernize our office and its office procedures and its finances. Fortunately, we had authorization at the last board meeting to create a finance committee to do 3 things. 1, oversee what goes on. 2, look at our investment accounts. And 3, bring us up to current standards. We've already had 3 people volunteer for that job, waiting for some more applications to come in, and then we'll choose a committee and meet once a month to review things and keep us going forward. It'll also put some review on the current expenditures as well. All right. Kim.
So how many boat motors were purchased, and does the POA have a vote? The chainsaws that were purchased, where are the chainsaws? And everything else that's been purchased, other than CAM's activities, where are they?
I don't know. It wasn't my job to track them down. I was just going through the book. So if we want to actually physically locate those things, we're going to have to do an audit, which is great by me. I advocate us doing some kind of audit. Or we're going to have to hire a private investigator to go track down an $1,800 boat motor, which will probably cost us $2 or $3 grand to find it.
How much would that audit cost?
Why does it matter?
Well, as long as we're on the subject of an audit. All right. There's 2 ways to look at this, folks. 1, okay, we need to reconcile our full set of accounting. Okay? I don't see how anybody could argue against that. And that's what an audit would do. We may have to go back 1, 2, 3, maybe more to get a good balance to come forward with. All right, fine. 2, we need to reestablish trust in our bookkeeping system and in our leaders. If I'm looking out over the audience, I don't see a whole lot of trust here. Not necessarily against me or anybody else, but we need to establish a baseline so that we can move forward and people will feel comfortable they're getting a fair deal out here. All right, more questions.
How much would an audit cost?
It could cost any place between $2,000 and $50,000 or $100,000, depends on what they
Is
do.
that $1 million? Up to $1 million?
No.
Did the POA lawyer say it could cost up to $1 million?
Joe, go ahead.
$1 million.
Last month, at last month's board meeting, you said there was no record in the 2016 tax return of the account, the debit card account.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily show up in the tax return per se. It would be wrapped into all the accounting, the profit and loss, the balance sheet, expenses, etc.
Okay, so, all right.
It wasn't in the audit.
There was no mention of it in the audit. You've had a chance, just let me see if there's anybody else. Anybody else? Raise your hand. Fred.
Can someone in the back turn the thermostat down? Question number 2.
You can't stand the heat, stay out of the town hall.
Question number 2. If indeed it comes to, we are going to do an audit, will we go back and have the beautification trust audited also?
Well, that's a good question. That's yet to be determined. That's getting pretty old. What year was that from?
2011.
Yep. There's still a lot of questions out there, Marvin.
2015.
There's still many questions about the way things were done and how they were done.
The same people on the board as then, quite a few.
If we feel it's necessary to go back and look at that, then that should be done.
I just wanted to say something very quickly. I don't know if people realize that there's 2 sets of books at the POA. They're using 2 different accounting systems, and they split the money between. We don't know why. I think Nick had mentioned he couldn't tell. It needs restructuring. We're not just asking for an audit, but you can't understand what they did and why they did it, and you can't track anything, nor can you continue forward. Because it makes no sense. They're splitting everything. It looks like Brent may have an answer. They're splitting things and nobody could figure out why. And there's no consistent accounting. The accounting firm quit, the bookkeeper quit, so you have people trying to figure it out who have no idea. It needs restructuring.
All right, let me say this about that. I can borrow a line from Hubert Humphrey. Just a moment. The POA has 2 accounting systems. One is called TOPS. It's a database used for property management, POA, HOA kinds of operations. Keeps a list of every property and who pays their CAM fees and fines and all kinds of things. All right. We use some of that for accounting purposes like issuing checks, so on. We also use something called QuickBooks. Sure, I'm sorry. Yeah, if people please pipe down so we can all hear. Okay, we use something in addition to that called QuickBooks. So we actually have 2 systems going at the same time. They're supposed to be mirror images of each other. Now, we have a new bookkeeper whose name is LaWanda West. She seems to be very competent so far, and she's not afraid to tell you what she's got on her mind, I'll tell you that. She's very outspoken, which is fine. That's what you need in a bookkeeper, somebody to tell you where you're going wrong. All right. She tells us that these 2 systems don't mirror each other, and they're supposed to. So one's got one set of numbers and the other's got another set. Okay? Therefore, how you arrive at which one to use, she's still sorting that out. All right, that's for 2018. She hasn't gone back to 17 yet. Thank you. All right, so we got 2 sets of numbers going at the same time, and according to her, even our audit numbers don't match those 2. So this is strictly according to her. I have no first-hand knowledge. We got 3 different numbers going at the same time. Now, it certainly doesn't mean there's anything nefarious. It might mean they just can't type down here and put the right numbers in. All right. Marta, you've had your hand up a while. Go ahead.
something really important here that needs to be said for every single person in this room. Your money that you pay in your CAM fees is important. You worked hard for it. We have a number of blatant red flags that say we've got some problems and we need to fix them. That's the bottom line. I'm not here about personalities. I'm here about the issues. And I would implore my fellow board members to listen to you in your concern and get your questions answered, your questions answered, your questions answered, all of our questions answered by individuals that know that field so that we can right the ship and get it moving in the right direction and bring our accounting up to professional standards. Because if someone like me, who is not an accountant, like many of you, I run businesses, and yeah, I have some experience, but I don't claim to be an accountant. But even I can look at a P&L and other reports and say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. So, I am hoping that we all push for a genuine, reasonable audit so that we can fix the problem. Thank you very much.
Brian.
I want to clarify, so I think there's some members here that we really believe we need an audit, and I agree, there's been a lot of transactions, a lot of equipment that has, disappeared off the face of the earth. My question is, will this audit include direction as to what next steps need to be taken? Do we spend the money to try to pursue this equipment? Who makes the recommendation to carry this forward? Because I see this as a cancer in the community right now. All of this, the distrust, the lack of information, portions of information coming out, lots of opinions about that information. Now, what opinions mean? Will there be closure? What do you recommend as far as closure for this episode so we move forward? It sounds like there's going to be an audit, and it sounds like we need to have documentation of a policy to move forward. I'd like to see how we move forward.
Yes, we do need an audit. We need closure. We need to restore the trust. Nobody is going to trust me or another board member to look into these things, so let's hire an outside professional to do the job. All right? Now, in terms of the equipment, it's gone.
Write it off.
It's gone. Mr. Moore, I'm sure you have a whole page.
I want to make a clarification real quick. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm going to give you the list of my questions as well as you. Thank you. And I'll get the mic. I provided both of you guys a list of my questions because I'm a board member, and I'm actually glad to have the opportunity to speak. I've been cut off several times in meetings. I've been cut off via emails. There's part of the board, 3 members of the board that are not invited to meetings any longer, that are held outside of the monthly meetings. So I'm going to ask every one of these 5 questions, and Marvin, I'd appreciate if you let me finish. And then, not that you have to answer these tonight, I'll respect that, but I would like for you to at least acknowledge them and put something in writing. I'm going to read these to you. There's been misstatements all across tonight. You know the information, Marvin. You know where the 2 tillers went. You guys had your Actually, you do.
I do. Where'd they go, Brent?
Actually, 2 of them were destroyed. They were worn out. Maybe I told you that during your meeting. So
She told us that?
Absolutely, she did. And you've got witnesses that were in that meeting that say they do. And Maybeth will testify to that. Okay, so if we could quit making accusations about people and actually tell the truth, which I've asked you to do over the last year multiple times, we'll get to an end of this. I happen to agree with Sheila Allen. I've said this before. If there's something illegal, I've said it in the meetings. If there's something illegal, if somebody has an LLC that's making money off this POA, bring it up. Tell me their names, tell me the company, who stole what, and we'll get to the bottom of it. Stop throwing out accusations of somebody took something. Name people by name and what they did wrong. Now, with that, every organization, we can improve. Everyone that works at a company can improve their organization, okay? Leaders work together, and they don't publicly shame, accuse, and create hysteria. That's what's happening. I've met with 2 people that have claimed that I've shamed them or whatever. I said, you know what? Here's what I'll do. I'll apologize to you.
We should apologize.
Okay.
Yep. That's right.
Actually, you called me a moron and you flipped me off.
You told me I talked to you on Sunday.
Actually, would you like to see the picture?
All right, quiet down. Let the
I've
gentleman
actually
speak.
said that I would apologize. If you'd like to see the picture, I'll show it to you.
Hey, let's focus on
the
red book here.
Let him speak.
I'm telling him to quiet down, let him speak.
I've offered to give apologies to the 2 people that accused me of stuff. They wouldn't accept it, okay? They don't want it cleared up. This kind of stuff right here, this is what they want. This is what they want. And you know our first meeting. I've pointed this out to you, Mr. McFadden, and you and your wife. The first time we met, you were angry about the tree cutting policy. It's the first time I've said it out in public, but you guys wanted this.
Do you have a comment on the
Let's
rest?
finish.
I've got 5. We're not moving on tonight, Lauren. I'm speaking my piece here.
Let him finish.
Okay. So the first time that we met at Joe's Coffee Place, I didn't know anything about you.
That's correct.
You asked me several things. You asked me to get rid of the compliance program.
I did.
All right. And I said, that's not my decision, it's a board decision.
I told you I had an exemption.
It's a board exemption.
I told you I had an exemption.
Let him finish. So the second thing you did is you wanted me to,
Hey, if you 2 guys want to debate your relationship, take it outside. We're going to stick to the book here.
It's making me nervous because the 5 questions that I'm going to ask you.
Let him finish.
After you ask me to grandfather you and your properties for that's what you have.
If we can't address the topic of the red book tonight, then we're going to adjourn the meeting.
I beg you. Let him finish.
So the first one, Marvin. And Brian, I happen to agree with you on this one. Marvin is chair of the Policies, Procedures, Bylaws Committee for the last 15 months. You were on the board. Why have you done nothing to correct any issues that you claim are present? 0 reports, 0 recommendations.
You want me to answer that? You just want to stand up here and argue about things.
Actually, I'll let you.
All right, transparency, man. Number 1. Okay, the Policies, Procedures, and Bylaws Committee is not. The Policies and Procedures and Bylaws Committee is not responsible for the finances of the business here. So that's an irrelevant question. Number 2.
No. I'm going to ask a question.
I would like to ask you, Mr. Moore, as president, why didn't you do something about all these problems?
A new member. We're blaming them for 10 years. Answer the question. So you ran.
This is really unproductive, people.
No.
Exactly.
So you ran on transparency and your abilities to mediate and bring people together. When you got on the board, I did do something. I appointed you as the Policies and Procedures chair. You've done nothing except create hysteria.
And you blame. You haven't done a thing. That's your job.
Wait a minute.
You were president. 0.
Marvin.
not about the red book. This is
Oh,
let's
yeah.
pick on
Yeah,
Marvin.
Marvin, he was
Marvin, people.
as president, why have you not involved professionals with a background in this type of claim? They could get to the bottom of this. A CPA could get to the bottom of this instead of non-professionals.
We asked for
Why do you
an
guys-
audit, and
You
we're
voted
turned
against the
down at
audit.
the last board meeting. We want to involve professionals if you would vote for that.
10 years as president, he takes on.
There you go.
Yeah.
Why do you guys continue to present misleading information? Marvin, at the last board meeting, I'd like an answer to this one. At the last board meeting, you specifically said, no board member directly benefited from the abuses. Okay? That leads us to believe there were indirect benefits. Specifically, who benefited and how? Tell us
What
by name
part
and what they
of
benefited.
no benefit don't you understand? That's very straightforward and clear, Mr. Moore.
What did we benefit? Who benefited?
It says no benefit. What part don't you understand?
You said direct benefit.
No board member
That's right,
directly
direct
benefited.
benefit. Nobody got any money, nobody got any gasoline, nobody got
indirectly
nothing.
benefit?
It doesn't say that.
Slick Willie.
Did they indirectly benefit?
I cannot say whether they did or did not get an indirect
Hysteria.
benefit. I don't have any knowledge of that. And
So,
for
Mr.
crying out loud, you're wasting everybody's time here by attacking me.
You are insinuating that people are committing
I'm
crimes
not
and
insinuating
not
anything.
proven. That is bull. Fraud. Total fraud.
So we've been.
All right. This is not productive. All we're doing is complaining here about me.
Yep.
Meeting adjourned.
Total fraud. Total fraud. You should be ashamed to resign.
Travis, you should just go.
I don't think so. You're putting us out. You're lying. You're cheating.
Bye, Travis. Go home with friends. Get a room. Yeah. Oh.
Starry, starry night.